Okay, this video I'm gonna go over the fixed ditches in more detail here. So a couple slides, then we'll jump over into the project and demonstrate. So it forces, what this does is it kind of forces that minimum ditch depth. So it's really great in fill conditions. What it kind of does is it's going to push that ditch down as far as it needs to go in order to make a ditch actually solve and keep the minimum ditch that's required. So it's a little bit complicated. So I do have some kind of best practices for how to edit it and use it. But basically, you're going to use it as a starting point. And then after you get your profile, you're going to switch back to a regular one because the way this is set up, it doesn't really work if you start trying to add point controls. And the reason is because in this screenshot I have here, you'll notice that I have a bunch of do not construct points. So what this template is actually doing is it's coming this, down your for slope. It's going and following these hidden components here, and then coming back on itself and come back up and finish it. So what that means is some of these point constraints aren't what you typically are used to seeing. Like if you go to change the for slope, it's not on the inside point because it's coming back on itself. So then if you try to point control off of this, you're going to notice that you're going to break your slope values because of the way things are set up. So I highly recommend you use this as a starting point, and then you don't try to start doing controls off of it, point controls and things like that. You're going to start getting some weird results. But so how do you edit this since it is a little bit more complicated, right? So what if I need to change this for slope? So I have this slide is hopefully pretty helpful in laying out what needs to be done. But what I did is I added labels to all the constraints. And so when you click on your template and you go to the active template here and you go to parametric constraints, you'll see all of them that I've set up. So these should be all the ones that you need. But for example, if you need to change the ditch for slope, this one right here. If I were to expand this, you'll see that this label actually exists on multiple points. So I can't just click on a point and change it. I got to click on all the points that have that label. So the easiest way to do that is to change it from this dialog, this parametric constraints. So what you can do is you can right click on a given label here and hit edit value, and this dialog then pops up, and it actually will be populated with the default value, the current value. So right now I have a 3:1, but say I want to move it to a 4:1. Just clear that out and enter in -1:4 to do a 4:1. Hit OK. That will update your template and change all of the constraints on all of the points that have that label applied to it. So if you're going to start editing it to change your slopes around, I highly recommend you only do it through here. That way you don't mess it up. Only other thing I want to mention is some of them you'll see a negative. You'll see a negative and then a regular label. That's because that constraint appears twice in the template, but with opposite values. So like this ditch width is positive, this ditch width is a negative. Same thing with ditch depth. So some of the points here call out for a positive value and some call for a negative value, just with the direction and the way the template's set up. So when you change those, you have to make sure that you keep those two to the same values. Same thing. So you have to make sure that if there's a negative, that the equivalent non-negative label is the same value. Okay. Other than that, it's pretty simple. Just change your values to what you want here, and you'll have your fixed ditch kind of set up. So the last thing is just the quick workflow, which what I have on the screen, I actually am suggesting to not do step 2, switch step 2, so I'll go over that. So first thing is just push your ditch template, your fixed ditch, and what that's going to do is give you that starting ditch profile. And then what you're going to do is you're going to project that ditch profile onto your alignment profile. Don't worry about the slight negative offset. what most likely you're going to do is you're going to project that over to your alignment, and then you're going to draw in your own ditch profile and using this projected profile as a starting point, because you probably got some jumps and some things you want to clean up a little bit, as what the starting ditch profile gives you is just a starting point. You know, it's going to have jumps and jogs in it that you probably don't want. The thing to remember is that this ditch profile that you start out with is giving you the maximum elevation that ditch can be at and still solve. Okay, that's important. So when you go to draw in your own profile or your new one, you got to make sure you stay under that ditch profile, because once you go above it, you're pushing your ditch higher, and now your back slope will be above your existing terrain, and it'll never solve, right? So you have to be careful on that. So other thing you want to make sure to do is remove your rules, because since the template that profile is based off of is a starting point, you want to get rid of the rules, because we're about to go back and we'll switch the template to a regular one. That way we can add point controls like I mentioned earlier. You can't really do that to this fixed ditch. But when you switch the template back to regular ditch profile or template, that ditch profile that you projected is going to change because it's linked to that template point. So we need to remove the rules so that it doesn't change, which I'll show here when we get into the example. And then lastly, we'll switch that template back to regular one, and then we'll add a point control to tell the ditch point to follow your ditch profile that you made. So that was all the slides I had. I want to jump over and just show the template, and then the next video I'll go over the actual workflow. So you'll see throughout all of these, like safety grading, you'll see a thing for fixed ditch, clear zone, you'll see a thing for fixed ditch. So you'll see the kind of the folder in there, fixed ditch common. So you'll see there's one for like barrier, one for common, and then there's one for with a bench option there. So if I just take a look at one of them, they're all pretty much, I mean, pretty much all the end conditions are the same, just with different values. So if you know what you're doing, you probably could just have like 3 and just change your force slope back slope values the way you want. But what I want to show is if I hit test here, you'll see when we're in more of a cut condition, where elevation is kind of above our proposed here, you'll see that it just kind of solves like you would expect it to. But the second we start getting down more, the second that minimum ditch depth is hit, it's going to start sliding down, because it says, okay, wait, I need to maintain that ditch depth. So what do I have to do to maintain that? So it'll just keep pushing down. So here's where I'm saying it's giving you that maximum elevation that's possible to still solve. Okay. And then other thing I want to show in this video, and then we'll jump over to another one, is if I go to the active template and I look at the parametric constraints, say ditch force slope, there's 3 points. So what I want to do is just right click edit, and I can change it, and I can do, -1 to 3 if I want to switch that. And you see how everything kind of switches. If I would just do 1 point at a time, I'd have to make sure I get them all, which I might not remember them. So please make sure that you edit it this way. It'll just make your life. Let me actually type in the value, right? So -1 to 4. There. Okay. So that concludes kind of this video of kind of overview of the fixed ditches. Next one we'll go through the actual process of how to use this on your corridor, or to create a corridor and apply a fixed ditch and create a ditch profile and stuff. So see you in the next video.